Today our subject is going to be a little bit different, but I think it's kind of important. And it's what happens when you pass away, but you're the person holding the family urns for the family. Your grandmother, your grandfather, your other family members, because you were the trusted soul that was in charge of holding on to the urns of ashes for the family. What happens? There's a lot of questions about that. I know it's a little odd to talk about, but it's an important thing to talk about. In Texas, there's laws about the right of survivorship, accepted for those kind of things and everything else that you own. So let's go ahead and do our fair use. So this program is intended for educational, commentary, and informational purposes. Any reference materials, including articles, news clips, images, or third-party media, are used under fair use guidelines for commentary, criticism, news reporting, education, and research. All viewpoints expressed are for the discussion purposes only and are not intended as legal, medical, or funeral planning advice. So there you go. So let's just go ahead and talk about this. You did everything right. You honored their last wishes. You arranged everything. And then one day, you're handed what's left, this urn of ashes. And suddenly, this question becomes not emotional, but it's kind of a practical question. What do I do now? Now, believe it or not, there is big money in this, and there's a lot of people who are in the same situation that they don't know what to do with it. One of the things that happens is if you have a whole family of this and they have all chose cremation, what is the family member supposed to do if they have 10 urns of people in their belongings? Now, what happens to those 10 urns when they pass away? And those urns don't belong to, let's say, my husband's family, they belong to my family. What happens to those things? It's kind of important to make decisions about them early. But here's the beauty of it all. Well, people will say, well, we'll decide that later. It comes months or years, and then you have a family disagreement. And then there's this emotional readiness versus your actual obligations, okay? Now, sadly, our ashes become part of our life. Some people take them home and set them on the mantle, and it just becomes part of the furniture in the living room or in your library or wherever you have a bookshelf for these things. Then there is the whole question of emotional attachments versus the avoidance, because people do get emotionally attached to these things. I mean, it's your spouse, it's your mother, it's your father. It's important. Then there's private memorial spaces. Okay. Now, who keeps them? When something happens to you, who keeps them? Should they be divided? Should all 5 children get a portion of the ashes and then you just hold only your portion? I mean, is that what we're supposed to do? And what are we supposed to do? It's really not clear what you're supposed to do with these things. And that's why I want to talk about this today, because it's an important question. It's something that does need to be discussed in a family, and people do need to um, plan their hereafter. Make sure you have a will. Make sure do you do everything so all of your wishes is what happens with your belongings after you pass away. The worst thing that can happen is all of a sudden there's a huge fight and you have family members suing family members over things that doesn't need to happen. Make it clear beforehand, but make it clear with even the urn of your grandma, your grandpa, your brother, whoever it is, the urn that you are responsible for in your family from your family. Okay, this is what we're going to talk about today. Now, the most common, the common thing people do is they just keep them at home. But that creates an emotional uh, uh, problem, because every time you walk in the room where those ashes are, the first thing that's going to come to your mind is, oh, there's grandma, oh, there's grandpa, or if somebody walks in your home and you have 3 or 4 different urns. Gosh, is your whole family over here on the shelf? I mean, and every time somebody sees that and discusses it, it's right back in your mind, oh, that they're not here with you anymore, and that you are a keeper of what remains. Okay, there are all kinds of different ways to deal with ashes now that's new and exciting. And actually, they make beautiful things for this, right? I know this discussion is not for everybody. I do. But, well, it's important. And the one thing you don't want to happen is to be a big fight over it. Okay. So who keeps them? Now, I'm going to show you something over here, and we're going to share this. Let me get this on my screen. Let me pull this up and get it on the screen. Hang on a second, guys. Okay. Let me see which one I'm going to pull. I'm going to pull a Wikipedia of it. Okay, there we go. Enter. Okay. All right, now. Okay, here we go. And then I'm going to put this on my screen. We're all going to look and see. Now, let me share my screen right quick. We'll get this up here. I have a little bit of a sore throat this morning, so I just need to bear with me because I'm afraid I'm going to lose my voice. I don't want to, but you know it's going to happen. I know it is. So let's talk about the urn itself. All right. What exactly are we discussing? Some people's families do not believe in cremation. Some people's families believe in the traditional type of burial. But cremation has been around for years and years and years. In fact, let's talk about that. An urn is a vase. It's often with a cover. It's typically narrowed neck above and a rounded body and a footed pedestal. Now, describing a vessel as an urn as opposed to a vase or other items generally reflects to the use of it rather than its particular shape or origin. Now, this term is especially often used for funeral or funerary urns, is what they're called, funerary urns. Okay, they're vessels used in burials, either to hold the cremated ashes or as a grave good. But it's used in many other contexts as well. So, let's talk about the funerary portion of urns, when it started, who started it, and why they're still using them. Okay, so let's go on back over here. Make sure my okay. So now we're going to change. Let's change our screen right quick because I want you to see the same thing that I'm seeing. So I'm going to stop sharing that one. I'm going to share this other screen. I know it. I know y'all. I know. Here we go. There we go. Now, so funerary urns, also called cinerary urns or burial urns, have been used by many civilizations. After death, the corpses are cremated and the ashes are collected and put into an urn. Pottery urns dating from 7000 BC, that means 7000 before Christ, have been found in early jail sites in China, where a total of 32 burial urns are found. Other early finds are in the, I can't say this, I'm not going to say this properly, but it's Lagointii and Shenexai. Okay, there are about 700 burial urns unearthed over the Yangshu, which is 5000 to 3000 BC, areas consisting of more than 50 varieties of forms and shapes. These burial urns were used mainly for children, but also sporadically for adults. Now, the Urnfield culture, this happened 1300 BC to 750 BC. A late Bronze Age culture in Central Europe takes its name from its large cemeteries of urn burials. The discoverer of the Bronze Age and the urn burials in Norfolk, England, promoted Sir Thomas Browne to describe the antiquities, sorry, okay, the antiques found. He expanded his study to survey burial and funerary customs and ancient and current, and published it as the Hydrantopia or urn burial. Okay, Hydrantopia. Okay. Now, in ancient Greece, cremation was usual, and the ashes were typically placed in a painted Greek vase, and particularly the lycopus or the shape of the vase. And this was used for holding the oil in funerary rituals. Now, Romans placed these urns in a niche in collective tombs called a columbarium. Okay, now, if you remember, there are some cases that we have watched, Sebastian Rogers and some of these other places, where they actually talk about the cemeteries and they talk about the columbariums that were in the cemeteries. Okay, now, literally, it's the dovecote. Okay, now, the interior of the dovecote usually has niches to house the doves. Cremation urns were also commonly used in the early Anglo-Saxon England and many pre-Columbian cultures. In some later European traditions, a king's heart and sometimes other organs could be placed in one or more of the urns upon his death, as happened with King Otto of Bavaria in 1916, and buried in different places from the body to symbolize a particular affection for the place by the departed. So if he loved one part of the land more than he did the other part of the land, they would put his heart where he loved most and leave the rest of the body in the normal cemetery. I know this is kind of not for everybody, but I really do want to talk about it because it does become a problem. And you have to go back and start, when did this happen? Where did it start? So we're going to go with the what, when, and where's, right? Okay. Now, in the modern funeral industry, cremation urns of varying quality, elaborateness, and cost are offered, and urns are another sources of potential profit for an industry concerned that a trend toward cremation might threaten profits from traditional burial ceremonies. Biodegradable urns are sometimes used for both human and animal burial. They are made from eco-friendly materials such as recycled or handmade paper, salt, cellulose, or other natural products that are capable of decomposing back into the natural elements and sometimes include a seed intended to grow into a tree at the site of the burial. Besides the traditional funeral cremation, ashes urns, it may also be possible to keep a part of the ashes of the loved one or a beloved pet in a keepsake urn or in ash jewelry. Although this might be banned in some localities, as the law of certain countries may prohibit keeping any human remains in a private residence. It is even in some places possible to place the ashes of two people in one so-called companion urn. Cremation or funeral urns are made from a variety of materials such as wood, natural stone, ceramic, glass, or steel. Now, a figural urn is a style of base or larger container where the basic urn shape of either a classic amphora or crucible style. It is ornamental with figures. These may be attached to the main body forming handles or simply extraneous decorations or maybe showing relief of the body itself. Okay, so the ashes, what they call it is trophies in fashion. The ashes, the prize in the biennial test cricket competition. What? No, we're not going to talk about that. Okay, hang on a second, guys. Well, let's go on down here. We're going to get past that. So that is when they started using certain urns when they cremated people and they would bury the urns. That's one thing. There's other things that can happen, such as people are making jewelry with the ashes of their loved one. Now that also presents a problem because if you make jewelry with your grandmother's ashes, are you going to be able to share that jewelry with your aunt, your sister, whoever? See what happens then? What's going to happen then? Let's take a look at some of these ideas for memorial pieces of jewelry, or they even make diamonds. They can make a diamond out of ashes, which I find very, very unique. So let's go find some of the ashes that have been turned into diamonds. I am not going to promote any one company because I just want to tell you about the option. There are many companies out here who do this. It is not as easy as it sounds. It takes quite a while to do this, and they only do, like they don't put two people. They can only make one diamond with one person there. It's the way I kind of understand this, but let's read about it and let's see what's the truth on that. All right, here we go. All right, let me share my page right quick so you can see what I see. I think it's a fascinating story. I think it's a fascinating subject. And it's a subject that is never talked about because people don't really want to talk about, the end. But I think it's important that we talk about the end, and everybody needs to have their wishes made so there is no guessing when it comes to what's going to happen. Okay? Now, let me just say this. Making a diamond out of an ash is kind of expensive. So let's go down to something we can talk about in general. Okay. Let's see. In general, using a diamond. Here, we're going to just use this one just for a reference. Okay. Turn the cremation ashes of your loved one into memorial diamonds, now available to order in the USA and Canada. So let's talk about the process of it. Let me see if there's on YouTube, if there's any YouTubes about making a diamond. Okay, hang on a second, y'all. I think it's kind of interesting. But the one thing I do know about this is it's expensive to do. because it is not an easy process. I have figured that part out, at least. Okay, come on, what are you doing? Let's go to YouTube, stupid. I don't know what it's trying to do. It's not trying to go to YouTube for me. Here we go. All right. Okay, let's go. Well, let's go to YouTube. All right, now, let's see. No, stop. Stop. Now, let's see. Turning ashes into diamonds. Let's check it out, guys. Mhm. Oh, Jack is taking his nap and he is just snoring away. He follows me everywhere I go. Everywhere I go. And so if I'm in here talking or whatever, he's coming in to take his nap here. Okay, so let's talk about this. Now this is from 4 years ago, and it is going to be the credit goes to health and fitness. Now this is just how they turn a diamond, how they turn the ashes into a diamond. So here we go. Here now, let me give full credit to health and fitness. Okay, my add button is not working again today, so I can't use my shift key to make a damn yeah, it's a little bit of an issue, but that's okay. Well, some days it works, some days it doesn't. So this is full credit to health and fitness, and this is how you turn human ashes into a diamond, which is another option to store ashes from your loved one. Okay, so here we go. Okay, let me share my screen. I forgot to share the screen. You would like to see how they do it, I'm sure. Here we go. So let's share the screen. Stop sharing that one, and we'll share this one. Here we go. Here we go. So this is how you turn human ashes into a diamond and how it works. Ready? Here we go. And thank you. This is under fair use with health and fitness. Is it going to show? What is it doing? I want to know why is it circling. See that circle right there? Okay, there we go. Right. Now, I don't know why, but sometimes it just circles like that. All right, let's make this big again. Here we go. All right.
And sealed inside a funeral urn. To find out how cremation works in detail, I leave you the video above.
That's not what I'm.
There is a particular process
Here we go.
that allows you to transform the ashes of the deceased into a diamond. When there is no availability, it is even possible to use the hair of the deceased person. It is a technique capable of symbolically and physically recreating that bond of closeness between the deceased.
Isn't that amazing? You can use even just a piece of hair from a deceased person that you loved and cared for into a diamond. I find that fascinating. I really do. So let's keep watching. Wow, that's interesting.
Deceased person and the relative. It allows you to carry that person with you always, but in another form, a diamond. This technique is seen by some people as a practice that does not respect the memory of the deceased person, while others see it as a better alternative to abandonment in cemeteries or scattering of ashes. Let me know how you think.
All right.
About 1,000 diamonds are produced each year, in particular for Japan, Germany, and Austria. Birth of the idea. The creator was the Swiss Ronaldo Willi, who in 2004 founded Algadanza in the canton of Grisons, Switzerland, the first company in the world to deal with the transformation of ashes into diamonds. The name Algadanza, in Romansh language, means just remember.
Now, I've always wanted to know a lot more about this because, like, I don't know how you feel about this, but I don't feel like that it's disrespectful. I feel like if you turn it into a diamond and you treasure that, you will always wear it. So I don't really find that disrespectful. Do I think that putting somebody in the ground is disrespectful? No, if that's part of the religion that I was brought up in. Do I find that putting the ashes in an urn and just leaving them on a shelf somewhere is disrespectful? No. It really depends on you, your religion, and the last wishes of the person that you have the ashes of. That's how I look at it. Here we go. And everybody, it's really to your own liking.
First, you need to apply for a mortuary passport, a document that authorizes the transport abroad of bodies, ashes, and mortal remains. Transportation can be done on your own or through a funeral home. The ashes of the deceased must be sent to Switzerland to the Albadanza Agency. As soon as they arrive in their laboratories, the ashes are analyzed and then a chemical fingerprint is drawn that identifies them.
I can see where this is getting very, very expensive if you're going to ship these ashes to a whole nother country. Because and having to get a passport to ship these ashes to another country. I had no idea that it was this detailed. Okay, we'll keep watching. It's very interesting.
At this point, you can move on to the processing phase. The ashes are ready to be treated with particular chemical agents in order to extract the carbon contained within the ashes. After the extraction phase, the carbon is subjected to very high temperatures and converted into graphite.
Wow.
The latter is then collected and inserted into a special machine. 60,000 bar of pressure and over 2,000 degrees of temperature will transform the compound into a rough diamond. These are special presses capable of replicating the same conditions that diamonds produce in nature over.
One thing I do know about this, and I hope they talk about this in what we're watching, is you can choose how large a diamond you want. And now how large a diamond you want, I don't know how much of the ashes they need to create that, but I do know that it was, I think somebody was quoted in don't, this was to do the ashes of their beloved baby dog. I think it was like $4,500 for a carat to turn the baby dog's ashes into a diamond. Is what I remember, but I hope they talk about this as we watch this.
Millions of years. Finally, the diamond will be cut and modeled at the customer's request. It can also be personalized with a small phrase engraved on the edge of the diamond,
Wow.
thanks to the use of the laser. It will be returned to the customer with a certificate of authenticity, which certifies the correspondence with the ashes of the cremation. The duration of the ash diamond process depends on the chosen carat weight, the size of the diamond, and the purity of the ashes, and generally ranges from a few months to a year. Usually, the resulting diamond is blue color due to the amount of boron naturally present in the human body, chemical element T that plays an important role.
That is fascinating. So you will end up with a blue diamond, not a white diamond, for making it out of ashes. I had no idea. That's very unique. That could make a beautiful piece of jewelry. Again, though, I mean, I think if it takes up to a year, it's going to be very expensive. I think it would be extremely expensive. Here we go.
In calcium metabolism. The diamond can also take on different shades, varying from white to black, depending on the chemical compounds that our body can absorb on particular occasions,
wow.
such as chemotherapy. Each person is therefore a different diamond from all the others, because it depends on the different proportion of the chemical elements of the deceased. The minimum cost of transforming the ashes into diamonds is 4,000 euros, but it can be lowered if the rough diamond, uncut, is requested. The cost can also reach around 14,000 euros.
14,000 euros, $4,000 euros to 14,000 euros. Let me see what this turns into. Well, actually, right here, let me see. Down here where it's talking about this. Okay. It says that it can range anywhere that I see 2,000 to 20. Okay, from typical range, there's a place called Eterna Memorial Diamonds, Algodanza Memorial Diamonds, and it ranges from $2,000 to $25,000 and up. That's fascinating, and it's extremely expensive. So I don't know if this option is for everyone, but I do find it unique and beautiful.
Depending on the diamond weight.
Okay, so that's that. Here we go. Now let me see about How long is this one? Let's watch this one. This one is going to be from Free Think. Let's watch this one for a minute. Now, this is full credit to Free Think, and I would like to hear their version, what they charge for it. Okay, credit to Free Think. Oops, got to spell it right. Okay. Not that one, hide. Let's get rid of that one. Okay, hang on a second. Oh, damn it. I really wish this would work right. Okay, here we go. Let's put this up here so we can give full credit to Free Think for their work. Thank you for sharing. So let's go ahead and share the screen for that one. Okay, here we go. I think it's just fascinating how they do this, though. Share. Okay. All right, here we go. Right.
This is my mom, and the diamond was made from her ashes.
Oh, how cool.
This is a story about a radical death care company called Eternova. With backing from Mark Cuban, Eternova is turning people's lost loved ones into diamonds.
Wow. Welcome home, honey.
The way people react when they hear about this,
Let's make that larger. I think this might be an easier one to watch. Whoops, here we go. Okay, there.
was either like, this is the most amazing and incredible idea I've ever heard, or like, I don't know, this is kind of weird.
They believe that America's cultural response to loss is broken, leaving people without rituals to help them heal.
Grief is an experience we're all going to go through. It's one of the most shared human experiences there is, and yet it's governed by just tradition and obligation. That's doing more harm than good. And so we have to overcome every obstacle because the cost of our mission not being seen out is too high.
Oh.
There's a slight lag. If I step on you at all, I apologize. I'm not trying to cut you off.
All right, let's go past that because I really just want to hear how they do this, how much it costs, and how many ashes do you need?
This is one of our
This is in
machines.
Austin, Texas.
This one is
I did
under
not know
pressure.
that.
So
We
we are
live in Austin.
currently actively growing a diamond right now at these
Oh wow,
stations.
that's beautiful.
Adele Arthur is the co-founder and CEO of Eternova, and she's on a mission to transform the way that we grieve.
Wow.
After completing her MBA, Adele got the idea for Eternova in 2015 after losing her good friend and mentor, Tracy.
When Tracy passed, she actually had her ashes split between three of us, and she was just like, hey, you know.
Well, you know what? That's good to know because I'm not familiar with cremation because our family does not do that. But I guess I did not understand that you can split these ashes amongst many people in the family. Okay, that's good to know. Here we go.
Go do something meaningful that you think both of us would really like. So we started doing a ton of research. Everything felt really like trinkety and cheap and transactional, and nothing kind of really spoke to me.
But then Adele had a conversation with a diamond scientist.
And he's like, well, if we can get the carbon out of Tracy's ashes, like I think we could grow you a diamond. And I mean, as soon as he said it, I was like, this is the idea. This is the thing that I'm meant to work on. She was the first diamond that we ever made. This is her black diamond. I wear it every single day.
Let's see if we can take a look at that. That's beautiful. Look at that. So that is actually a black diamond grown in that laboratory, and it is her friend. That's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. And no, I do not find it disrespectful at all. It's gorgeous. What a beautiful thought. Okay.
I am so excited to introduce y'all to Peggy. We are growing two beautiful diamonds, one for her daughter Lori and another for her grandson Alex.
Anytime you start a company, it's like a huge roller coaster. One of the challenging things about starting Eternova was just like, it was so unknown in so many different ways. I mean, like what we do has so much pressure, like we're handling someone's most valuable possession basically. And you have this incredibly difficult thing to do, which is growing a diamond from carbon.
In the beginning, when we started, this was a crazy supply chain to set up. A lot of these scientists don't even exist in the United States. We were hunting down scientists internationally, flying to Europe, convincing them to get coffee with me, and having to learn how to negotiate in completely different business cultures. A lot of
I mean, I can see where this might be difficult because they're giving you their trade secrets. I mean, you're going to go over there and she's going to learn how to basically make a diamond from that carbon, which is very, very well. You know, this is exactly how they grow lab diamonds too. Really, they're grown in a lab, but it starts from a tiny diamond. It is part of the growth. It starts with a tiny diamond. Lab diamonds are exactly the same makeup as an earth mine diamond. The reason they are always cleaner because you can control the heat, you control everything about it. And so this is basically growing a lab diamond, but it's growing it out of human ashes, which is just fascinating to me. It's beautiful. Here we go.
This technology actually came out of Russia. So dealing with Russian business culture, it's so different than the United States. Honestly, that was kind of my first encounter with a bit of misogyny. Gosh, I learned a lot, but Lord, the lows can be excruciating. We've had moments where our entire supply chain went away. They basically were like, good luck.
And then in 2019, Eternova caught a big break.
Oh.
A $600,000 deal with.
I want to go past that part because I just want to hear them talk about how they make them, how much they cost, etc. So here we go.
On Shark Tank. That was really a turning point to
All right, let's go past that.
become the new urn.
Look at that. That's gorgeous.
Eternova commissioned grief research from Baylor University to investigate the diamond's impact on the recipient's mourning experience.
Aww.
John coming home.
John coming home.
Look at the
Early
smile on her
reports
face.
suggest that Eternova's months-long diamond-making process supports the vast majority of participants through their grief journey.
You know, going into this, we thought that this was all about the diamond. But what we ended up finding was every time we shared an update with the family, we would just get these unbelievable responses.
I wanted something that when I had her diamond and people would ask me, "That's so beautiful, where'd you get it?" And I can say, "This is my daughter, and this is how beautiful she really was."
Some of the biggest.
You know, that's really hard. I can understand somebody having a hard time talking about it. I do. I really do. But then you got to think about this. Every day that memory is with you. You can wear it every single day. I think this is just fascinating. And I'm going to let these people know that I think they're doing a beautiful job. They're here in Austin, and I would love to talk to this company and see how many diamonds they've actually made and see how long their process is, because you're not having to ship these overseas. You're not having to get a passport for your ashes. It's right here in Texas. That is great, and it cuts the cost down significantly, but I think it is still an expensive way to deal with your ashes. Here we go. Oh, come on now. Oh, don't do that. My little thing is trying to stick here.
Problems that we have or things that we don't talk about that much. Death and grief is one of those. That's what I think that we at Eternova can make a mark on this planet, is by helping remove that stigma.
And I can tell you that your dad would be so proud of who you are. And for that reason, we would love to grow his diamond for you.
Hey, Cecilia, this is Garrett. This
wow.
is going to be the starting point to create your beautiful diamond of Callie.
We have Callie's diamond. We are going to grade and certify her diamond.
Oh, wow.
It's really beautiful. Thank you so much.
A lot of death care has been transactional, right? You buy a
See, I wonder if they send this to the GIA. I mean, where do they send this to be graded and certified? I'd like to know that too. What an interesting way to deal with your ashes. And I can see that it probably would not take very many of the ashes to do this. I don't know that, but that you really could spread the ashes around to each person in the family, and they can make their own choice. And then you're not over here with grandma's urn and people and having to have a survivorship for grandma's urn. Here we go.
coffin, you have a funeral, and then we're done. And that's not how grief works.
The death care industry used to be funeral homes, burials, and later cremations. In 2021, human composting, biodegradable coffins, trips to space. These are just some of the growing number of alternative options better suited to individual values.
I think what resonates with a lot of people about the diamond is you have that physical anchor to your loved one.
This is the most precious thing I own.
one of the things that I realized was that I really find a lot of purpose in helping somebody through a hard time and helping them find some brightness in it. Eterniva's mission is, really to challenge culture and to shift people's perceptions of grief and loss.
Wow.
There's this window of time that they're forming meaning around what just happened. And if you can meet them in that window and you can help shape the messages that they tell themselves, you can go and change the world.
That's gorgeous. Okay, so again, this is from Free Think. This company is right here in Austin, and the name of this company is Eterniva Memorial Diamonds. So if you have a need for this, you might want to contact Eterniva. Let me see if I can find the address for Eterniva, just to give the information out in case somebody needs this information. So hold on a second. So let me put this in the chat, how you spell it. I'm going to put the exact name, how to spell it. So it is, come on thing, it's not working. It's, oh boy, Eterna. It's E-T-R-N. Okay, hang on. E-T-R-N. Hang on a minute, guys. I wish my shift button would work. ETERNEBA.com. So there it is. This is the company in Austin that actually makes the diamonds, so you don't have to send it overseas. So there it is. If you want to go check them out, see what their prices are. You might be pleasantly surprised, and I think that it's a lovely way to deal with ashes. Now let's move on to the next thing that happens, or that can happen, with the ashes of the loved ones that you have, that can create a big problem in families that you could avoid if you make these plans ahead of time. So now let's look at the glass memorial art. There is beautiful, beautiful pieces of blown glass art that is made from the ashes of the human. So let's look at that right quick. So we're going to look at the general overview. Let me share my screen. Now, I know that there is a couple of companies here in Austin that also make the memorial glass. And I've seen a few of them, and they are gorgeous. People are so talented. I mean, I'm just jealous. I'm not talented like that at all. Here we go. Let's take a look at it. Here we go. Share. Okay. I want to see glass art for ashes. That's what I want to see. Here we go. Okay, let me see if I can find exactly what I'm looking for. So they can make, let's see, what is it called, guys? Hang on a minute. Not that one. Let me go find the exact one, because this one just talks about glass, the general overview of glass art techniques. That's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about actual art, or actual pieces of art that are made from ashes. So let's see. Art glass made from, hang on, from human ashes. Let's see. Okay, let me see if I can find one. Let's see. We're not going to look at that. I don't want to look up, maybe Wikipedia is not the place to go. Let's go out to the internet and see if we can find some. I know it's out there. So it's art glass, human ash. Let's see if we can find something to look at over here. Okay. Unique cremation glasses. Here we go. This is what we want to look at. Now let me share my screen so you can see what I'm looking at. It's beautiful. There's such beautiful items here. Okay, here we go. Let's share. Now, this is called Spirits in Pieces, and they make beautiful cremation jewelry and glass art. They are family owned, and again, based on this phone number, I believe they are in Austin, Texas. So I want to share their information. Let me go down here and get their information for anybody who may be interested in this. It is gorgeous. I don't think it costs as much as as making a diamond, but it is something that you can enjoy, okay? So let's find their way to contact them. All right. Okay, let's see. We can request a catalog by sending in your email. Follow us. Let's see. Let's see. I do not see. Well, I'll just put their phone number I'll just put their phone number in here so you guys can take a look if you're interested in this particular type of. I'm going to take that. I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to copy that link and I'm going to put it down in the. Okay, here we go. Let's put this in the chat. So if you're interested in it, you'll know where to find these people. It is gorgeous what they're making here. Here we go. There you go. There you go. All right. Now I'm going to put this on the screen, and this is spiritpieces.com, and they are located in Austin, Texas, and their phone number will pop up when you go to their website. So let's take a look at what they're making. So they make rings, they make art glass, they make ornaments for your Christmas tree, they make tree of life memorials, they make cremation jewelry with crushed opal. They can make spirit pieces from $50 to $100. That's not very expensive. We were founded with the guiding principle of providing a beautiful opportunity to families of those who've lost loved ones. We offer a wide assortment of handmade cremation jewelry and cremation glass art made by the artists who believe in healing through art. Each spirit piece is made specifically for you with love and respect infused with ashes of your loved ones to create a lasting, beautiful memory through generations. That is gorgeous. Look at these different items they can make. Wow. Look at this one. This is beautiful. Look at that. And this was a cathartic experience. My mom picked this piece out with me before she passed away. So when it was her favorite color and she was excited to know that now her and Dad will be forever together in this piece for me. It turned out just beautiful. I highly recommend spirit pieces to anyone wanting something unique but close to their heart of their special someone. Thank you for doing such a wonderful job and caring for my parents. Isn't that beautiful? That's beautiful. Okay. Now they do have something on YouTube. Maybe we can take a look and see how they do this, because I find it very, very interesting as well. So let's go out to YouTube and we'll look up spirits and pieces. Here we go. Here we go. Spirits. That's gorgeous. That's beautiful. So spirit pieces, cremation jewelry. Let's take a look at it. So this is going to be from 4 years ago, and it is, let's see. I would like to, okay, spirits and pieces, cremation jewelry and glass. We'll look at this one. Learn about it right here. Okay, let me pull this up. All right, let me share my screen so you can see what I see. Just gorgeous, just gorgeous. Here we go. We're going to learn how they do this. All right.
Spirit pieces. We give you something truly beautiful to remember your
They're
dearly
in Austin,
departed
Texas,
pets,
and this is their
friends,
actual
or family members.
email
Our
address
talented
to
artists
find their
infuse your loved one's
company.
remains with
Wow.
radiant glasswork to create exquisite memorial pieces that last for generations.
Spirit pieces are exceptional because it imbues the glass with just something so much more special and personal.
Think about it like this too. Each one of them is actually a one-of-a-kind piece because it is made from the ashes of your loved one, not just a plain piece of glass. I think that's beautiful. Look what he's making. It's just gorgeous.
To take something that is in itself beautiful, to give it that meaning, that import, and the personal memory.
With decades of experience crafting
wow,
glass
that's
art, we guarantee our work is professional and of the highest quality, and that each handcrafted piece is entirely unique in form.
Working on spirit pieces is pretty special in the fact that you're having a positive impact on people's lives. You're giving back something that reminds them of their loved ones, something that they can feel, something that they can see, something that they
Look
can
at
handle.
that. That is gorgeous. It's a butterfly. That's just gorgeous. Wow, I'm impressed. I really am. Today I've seen a lot of beautiful things that I never really thought about until I started talking about what happens and who's responsible and what do we do with it. All right, here we go.
From paperweights to memorial flames, touchstones, jewelry, and more, Spirit Pieces offers a large variety of glasswork so you can find the perfect piece to memorialize those who matter most. And because the infusion process requires such little cremains, you create multiple and varied works of art to share the memory of your beloved with friends and family. Honor your loved one's legacy through our enduring, superbly crafted glass.
That is just gorgeous. And look how tiny the amount of, they only needed just a little bit, and you can make such a beautiful item. Wow. I'm impressed. I really am. So again, this is Spirits Pieces and spiritsandpieces.com in Austin, Texas. Here we go. We'll let this finish.
Glass art.
Golly, that's nice. All right. Here you go, guys. Remember through art. Very nice. Now, let me come back over here. I'm going to leave that right there for a second. And then there's another option. Of course, now there is the cemetery or the columbarium placement. Now, the columbarium is what I wanted to talk about next because we all know what a traditional burial is. But the columbarium is something different that I have not seen before. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at it. Okay. The columbarium. We're going to pull this up on Wikipedia. So just a minute. Let's share our screen right here. We'll quit sharing that one so we can share the next one. Okay, I know this topic is not for everybody, but it's something we need to think about because eventually we are all going to deal with who is doing what with what the remains are to your family members and where do they go after you pass away? Who do they go to? What happens to them next? I think it's a very important discussion. Now, if you're coming in here on replay, that's fine. It's beautiful, whatever. When you get a chance, just watch it. All I ask that when you come in or you go out, is please hit that like button or please hit that thumbs up. It's kind of important. And I would appreciate your little thumbs up to help us get into the algorithm. And I know that not every subject that we talk about is for everybody, because I know we talk about a lot of different things. But I just think that some things people don't talk about because they are so they feel guilty that they're even having to think about what's going to happen to grandma's urn next or to mama's urn next or who's going to be the responsible. They don't want people to think that they don't want it because that's not the problem. The problem is what happens to them after the fact. Okay, so here we go. Okay. Now, a columbarium, also called a centenarium, is a structure for reverential and usually public storage of funerary urns. I always want to say funeral, but it's funerary urns, holding cremated remains of the dead. The term comes from the Latin columba, which is a dove, and originally solely referred to a compartmentalized housing for doves and pigeons, also called dovecotes. Now let's talk about the background of where it started. The Roman columbarium were often built partly or completely underground. The columbarium, or the Pomponus Hylas, is an ancient Roman example, rich in frescoes, decorations, and precious mosaics. Today, columbariums can be freestanding units and part of a mausoleum or another building. Some manufacturers produce columbarium built entirely off-site and brought to a cemetery by a large truck. Many modern crematoriums have columbariums. Examples of these are the columbarium. Sorry, guys, it's a lot. Examples of these are the columbarium in Père Lachaise Cemetery in Paris and the Golden Green Crematorium in London. In other cases, columbariums are built into church structures. One example is the Cathedral of Our Lady of the Angels, which is in Los Angeles, California, which houses several columbariums. And they have little niches in the mausoleum built into the lower levels of the cathedral. The construction of the columbarium within the churches is unique and it's unambiguous in the Czechoslovakian Hussite Church. An example can be seen at the Church of St. Nicholas in Old Town Square, Prague. And the Catholic Church, although traditional burial is still preferred, cremation is permitted provided that the cremated remains are entombed and that the cremation is not done for the reasons contrary to the Catholic faith. As a result, they are within some Catholic cemeteries. Okay, columbariums are often closely similar to those in the form of pagodas, which function as an inside columbarium pavilion at the Buddhist temples, which from ancient times have housed cremated ashes. In Buddhism, ashes may be placed in the columbarium, which can be either attached or part of a Buddhist temple or cemetery. This practice allows survivors to visit the temple and carry out traditional memorials and ancestral rites. Okay, let's go to YouTube and see if there's something about that. Okay, let's see. YouTube has everything, but right? So let's take a look at them. All right. Okay, there are a few. I want to know what exactly is it? How does it work? Okay, let's find out. Here's something from the Oliver's Funeral Home and Crematorium, and it says, what is a columbarium? If you're going to, okay, here we go. Here we go. We're going to watch this, but first let me give full credit to Oliver's Funeral Home. Here we go. Okay, let's put this in here, and let's share the screen. There we go. Oliver's, oh, you gotta spell it right, stupid ass. It's Olivers. All right. Here we go. Now, so let's turn this on, and this is, let me share the screen here. And then he's going to talk about exactly the columbarium and what it is, where it is, how it's used, because I have a lot of questions. Now, can you put two people in one, or do you have to buy an individual square for each person? How does this actually work? That's a question that I have, and hopefully we can be answered here today. Here we go. All right. Make this big. All right, thank you for sharing, and let's go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Craig McPhee, and I'm a partner and one of the funeral directors at Oliver's Funeral. And I'd like to welcome you to Oliver's Garden of Memories columbarium. Oftentimes what we tell people is that cremation provides you with a lot of options. And this is one of the options. Rather than burying an urn in the ground, one of our columbarium niches serves the exact same purpose. The columbarium is designed to hold two urns.
Oh,
or one
there you
companion
go.
urn. A companion urn is
How about that? See, that was one of the first questions I had about this, is how many urns can you put in a columbarium site once you purchase it? Because you purchase these just like you purchase a cemetery lot. Now, when you buy a cemetery lot, a lot of people don't realize this, but you actually own that piece of ground, and you get a deed to that little piece of ground. Okay? You own it, it's yours. I own a few of these. Here we go.
urn is intended with the right size to hold the cremated remains of two people. For example, a husband and a wife. Now, there are size restrictions if you're going to place two urns or even a companion urn in the columbarium. And our funeral directors will be more than happy to explain those size dimensions to you. The front of the niche also acts as a monument. The name, the family name, and the first name, and the dates, and even some designs can be placed on the niche front in order to customize it and honor your loved one. So as you can see, a lot of our niche are personalized, but a lot of the fonts stay the same. But
I think that's actually, it's like you're buying a headstone, but it's a flat stone that's going on the front of the squares that you purchased. I think that's really kind of unique, and I like the fact that they have little spots where you can place a small grouping of flowers onto the front of your square. I think it's kind of beautiful, actually. I never really thought about this before. Here we go.
the families do have the option to have different kind of designs or different applications.
Oh, look at that. That's cute.
A design or a picture in order to customize it and make it a true reflection of your life. For any questions regarding the columbarium, if you were interested in reserving or purchasing a columbarium niche, please call Oliver's Funeral Home at 780-532-29.
All right. Thank you for sharing. All right. That was just a short little video of how the columbarium works, what it is, where you can get them, and how many urns can actually fit in them. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is the ash scattering. It is not legal to just scatter ashes wherever you want to. That's not how it works. So we're going to pull up ash scattering and take a look at that as well. So here we go. Let's go to the Wikipedia for it and take a look. All right. Here we go. The scattering of ashes. Let's go on over here and find it. There are all different places where you can scatter ashes. Okay. Well, let me go over here to Wiki. Okay. Okay. Now, get on down here. See, there's every agency, and there's a many agencies of where you can scatter ashes. I had no idea it was such a big business to scatter the ashes. Okay. Hang on a minute. Let's see what this is not taking me where I want to go. Let me get it right here and see if I can get it to work this way. Here we go. There we go. Back out of that. Here we go. Let's paste it right here. Okay, now let's go. Okay. Let's see, it says it doesn't really have a name for that, but I know it does. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay. Where and how to scatter ashes. Now, this is something that you hear about all the time about, well, we took my husband's ashes with us on the cruise boat and they allowed us to scatter the ashes in whatever ocean you're going to. But see, you have to have permission. You can't just go dump these ashes anywhere you want to. And I thought that was quite amazing too, because I never really thought about needing permission to scatter ashes somewhere. I thought that was, well, what do you mean? It's just ashes. But when you stop and think about it, that is a human body. That is human material. Okay. So, let me go back over here where I was. And let's talk about this for a second. Now, let me share my screen so you can see what I'm talking about. It's important. Okay, and this is just something about ash spreading. So, how do you scatter ashes outdoors? Well, scattering ashes in nature can be one of the most heartfelt ways to say goodbye. It brings together peace, symbolism, and connection to the land or sea. Whether you choose a forest, a mountaintop, or the open water, it's a beautiful tribute, but one that comes with responsibilities. This guide walks you through how to scatter ashes outdoors in a way that honors your loved one, respects the law, and cares for the environment. So, is it legal to scatter your ashes outdoor? In the U.S., scattering ashes is permitted, but rules can vary a lot depending on the location. Here are some legal points to keep in mind. Private property. You need permission from the landowner. Public lands like parks, forests, etc. Many places allow ash scattering, but often with restrictions or permits. Okay, so don't just run into the national forest and say, I'm spreading this over by the red oak. You've got to have permission and you need a permit. National parks usually have stricter rules. Check with the park rangers ahead of time at the office. Now, at sea, the EPA requires scattering cremated remains at least 3 nautical miles from the shore under the Marine Protection, Research and Sanctuaries Act, the MPRSA. After the scattering, you must report it to the EPA within 30 days. So no, you cannot just go over to the coast. You can't just go over to the beach and say, hey, I'm going to scatter these ashes. That's not how it works. You need to be 3 nautical miles away from the landmass, okay? That's how that goes. Now, let's finish looking at this. Now, meaningful places to scatter ashes outdoor. Here are some of the places often chosen and the locations that feel special, peaceful, or connected to the loved one's life. A forest or memorial grove. Mountains or overlooks where your loved one found peace. Natural reserves or parks with permission. The ocean from a boat beyond required distance or large lakes. Memorial gardens or scattering gardens in cemeteries. I did not know they made such a thing. Well, that's interesting too. I did not know that. How to scatter the ashes respectfully and beautifully. How do you do the scattering can make the ceremony as meaningful as the location. Here are the options. Casting. You can gently release the ashes into the air, stand upwind so they don't blow back. Trenching. You can dig a shallow hole or a trench, deposit your ashes, and cover them with the soil. Water ceremony. Using a biodegradable urn or a container and allow the ashes to be released over the water. If it's the sea, follow the required distance and material rules. Raking. Spreading ashes across the ground and rake them into the soil, often used in scattering gardens. Aerial scattering. From a drone or an airplane, this usually means working with a service experienced in this. Now, you can personalize the ash grading ceremony. Small touches help the moment feel deeply personal. Play a favorite song or read a poem. Invite your family members to share the memories. Leave something symbolic, flower petals, biodegradable wreaths, etc. Mark your GPS coordinates or take photos if you want to revisit that spot later. Now, I have a suggestion for that if you're interested in that. I think it would be beautiful to take hang on a second, guys. Oh boy. Take your coordinates, to get your GPS coordinates, and actually have that tattooed in a place on your arm or a place on your body that you don't really have to share with anybody else unless you just want to. I've always thought that would be a beautiful way to memorialize where you spread those ashes. Okay, let's keep going here. Now, environment practical tips. Use biodegradable urns or containers whenever possible. Avoid plastic, metal, or anything that doesn't decompose. Check the wind and the weather ahead of time. Calm conditions help avoid ashes blowing back onto the people who are unintended areas. Know the terrain access safely and whether the site is fragile or ecologically sensitive. We're here to help. So this place is called At Everest. We understand that honoring a loved one's memory is deeply personal. That is why we offer a shared grove where ashes are spread among the trees. Spreading groves where the memories can live on. All right. Now, what to do after you scatter ashes? If required, report to relevant authorities, e.g. the EPA for sea scattering and the US EPA +1. Note, the date and location in writing or a family record helps others find the spot later. If you want, create a small memorial or a tribute afterwards online, at home, or at a gathering. That's kind of interesting. A quick checklist before you go. So here's the checklist to think about if you're going to scatter ashes of your loved one. Confirm the local rules and permits. Ensure your urn or container is compliant with biodegradable if required. Arrange to transport, boat or land, and the weather backup. Prepare a small script or plan for your gathering and let someone know where you're going because safety matters. The bottom line is scattering ashes outdoors offers a powerful way to honor someone. With a little planning, respecting legal boundaries, and choosing meaningful places and caring for the environment, you can create a tribute that feels right and brings peace. Okay, that's interesting. There are so many things. Let's talk about the last thing on our list. The last thing on our list is your cremation memorial alternative burial wreath placements. Now, this is something that's completely different. I never ever thought about a burial wreath. Okay, never. So here we go. Let's talk about this. Let's see. Nope. Hold on. Yeah, this one right here. Okay, they're not talking about the wreath in the sea. They're talking about like a wreath, I guess a memorial wreath. You're going to are they saying putting the ashes in a wreath? Let's see what they're talking about. All right. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, look, this is interesting. Now, let me share the screen on this one. This is a new concept. I've never seen this before either. Here we go. Okay, now, cremation is the method of final disposition of a corpse through burning. Cremation may serve as a funeral or post-funeral rite as an alternative burial. In some countries, including India, Nepal, cremation or an open-air pyre is an ancient tradition starting in the 19th century. Cremation was introduced or reintroduced into other parts of the world. In modern times, cremation is commonly carried out with a closed funeral, a cremator, at a crematorium. Cremation leaves behind an average of 2.4 kilograms, which is 5.3 pounds of remains. So you have 5.3 pounds of ashes, known as ashes or cremains. This is not all ash, but includes unburnt fragments or bone mineral, which are commonly ground into powder. They are inorganic and inert, and thus do not constitute a health risk and may be buried, interned, in a memorial site retained by relatives or scattered amongst various ways. Now, in the ancient information, there is a secondary cremation. Cremation dates at least 17,000 years ago. In the archaeological records, with the Mungo lady, the remains are partly cremated. With the Mungo lady, the remains of a partly cremated body found at Lake Mungo, Australia. Alternative death rituals which emphasize one method of disposal, burial, cremation, or exposure have gone through periods of preferences throughout history. In the Middle East and Europe, both burial and cremation are evident in the archaeological records of the Neolithic era. Cultural groups had their own preference and prohibitions. The ancient Egyptians developed an intricate transmigration of soul. I'm sorry, let me repeat this little statement. Egyptians developed an intricate transmigration of a soul theology, which prohibited cremation. This was also widely adopted by Semitic peoples. The Babylonians, according to Herodotus, embalms their dead. The Phoenicians practiced both cremation and burial. From the Cycladic civilizations in 3000 BCE until the Submithians era in 1200 to 1100 BCE, Greeks practiced burial. So cremation appeared around the 12th century BCE, probably influenced by Anatolia. until the Christian era, when the inhumation again became the only burial practice, with combustion and the inhumation had been practiced depending on the era and the location. In Rome's earliest history, both inhumation and cremation were in common use among all the classes. Around the mid-Republic, inhumation and almost exclusively replaced by cremation, with some notable exceptions, and remained the most common funerary practice until the middle of the empire, when it was almost entirely replaced with inhumation. Now, in Europe, there are traces of cremation dating to the early Bronze Age. We talked about that a while ago, and the Pannonian Plain and along the Middle Danube. The custom became dominated throughout Bronze Age Europe with the urn-filled culture, which was from 1300 BCE. In the Iron Age, inhumation again becomes more common, but the cremation persisted in the Venalian culture and elsewhere. Now, Homer's account of the Patroclus burial describes cremation with subsequent burial in a tumulus, similar to an urn-filled burials and qualifying as the earliest description of cremation rites. This may be an anachronism of during my. Oh Lord, let me start over on that sentence. During this anarchism, as during Mycenaean times, burial was generally preferred, and Homer may have been reflecting the more common use of the cremation at the time that Lad was written centuries later. Okay, so that must have been a book. Now, criticism of burial rites is common, Criticism of burial rites is common aspirations by competing religions and cultures, including the association of cremation with fire sacrifice and human sacrifice. Hinduism, Jainisms are notable for only allowing but prescribing cremation. Cremation in India is first attested in the cemetery age culture, which was from 1900 BCE. It was considered the last phase of the Indus Valley civilizations and the beginning of the Vedic civilizations. The Rig Veda contains a reference to the emerging practice in the RB 10.15.14, where the forefathers, both cremated and uncremated, are invoked. Cremation remains a common but not universal in both ancient Greece and ancient Rome. According to the Caesario, burial was considered the most archaic rite in Rome. The rise of Christianity saw an end to cremation in Europe, though it may have already been in decline. In early Roman Britain, cremation was used but diminished by the 4th century. It then reappeared in the 5th and the 6th centuries during the Migration era, when it was sacrificed animals were sometimes included on the pyre, and the dead were dressed in costumes with ornaments for the burning. The custom was also very widespread among the Germanic peoples of the northern continental lands from which the Anglo-Saxon migrants are supposed to have been derived during the same period. These ashes were usually thereafter deposited in a vessel of clay or bronze, which is an urn, and these customs again died out with Christianity conversations of the Anglo-Saxons or early English during the 7th century, when Christian burials became the general. Now, in the Middle Ages, in parts of Europe, cremation was forbidden by law and even punishable by death if combined with heathen rites. Cremation was sometimes used by Catholic authorities as part of a punishment for accused heretics, which included burning at the stake. For example, the body of John Wycliffe was exhumed years after his death and burned to ashes, with the ashes thrown in the river, explicitly as a posthumous punishment for his denial of the Roman Catholic doctrine and transubstantiations. Okay. The first to advocate for the use of cremation was the physician Sir Thomas Browne in Urn Burials in 1658, which he interpreted cremation as a means of oblivion and reveals plainly that there is no antidote against the opium of time. Honoretta Brooks Pratt, became the first recorded cremated European and individual in the modern times when she died on 26th of September in 1769 and was illegally cremated at the burial grounds in Hanover Square in London. Now the reintroduction. Here we go. In Europe, a movement to reintroduce cremation as a viable method for body disposals began in the 1870s. This was made possible by the intervention of a new furnace technology and contact with the Eastern cultures that practiced it. At that time, many proponents believed that Masama theory and that the cremation would reduce the bad air that caused diseases. These movements were associated with secularism and gained a following in the cultural and intellectual circles. In Italy, the movement was associated with anti-clericalism and Freemasonry, where these were not major themes of the movement in Britain. Okay, so then in 1869, the idea was presented to the Medical International Congress of Florence by Professor Coletti and Castellani. I know I'm saying this wrong. Castellani, in the name of Public Health and Civilizations. At the Concern with Hygiene in 1873, Professor Polo Grani of Lodi and Professor Ludovico Brunetti, I'm not good with those words, of Padua published a report of practical work that they had conducted. A model of Brunetti's cremating apparatus, together with resulting ashes, was exhibited at the Vienna Exposition in 1873 and attracted great attention. Meanwhile, Sir Charles William Siemens had developed his regenerative furnace in the 1850s. Now, his furnace operated at a high temperature by using regenerative preheating of fuel and air for combustion. Now, in regenerative preheating, the exhaust gases from this furnace are pumped into a chamber containing bricks, where the heat is transferred from the gases to the bricks. The flow of this furnace is then reversed so that fuel or air passes through the chamber and are heated by the bricks. Through this method, an open hearth furnace can reach temperatures high enough to melt steel, and thus process made cremation an efficient and practical proposal. Now, Charles's nephew, Carl Fredericks von Siemens, perfected the use of this furnace for the incination or organic materials of his factory in Dresden. The radical politician, Sir Charles Wentworth Dykes, took the corpse of his dead wife there to be cremated in 1874. The efficient and cheap process brought about the quick and complete incineration of the body and was a fundamental technical breakthrough that finally made industrial cremation a practical possibility. Now, the first crematorium in the Western world opened in Milan in 1876. Milan's crematorium temple was built in the Monumental Cemetery. This building still stands but ceased to be operated in 1992. That is a long time. Wow, that's incredible. So Sir Henry Thomas, the first Baron, a surgeon and physician to Queen Victoria, had seen Guarani's cremator at the Vienna Exposition and had returned home to become the first and chief promoter of cremation in England. His main reason for supporting cremation was that it was becoming a necessary sanitary precaution against the propagation of diseases among populations and daily growing larger in relation to the area it occupied. In addition, he believed that cremation would prevent premature burial, reduce the expensive funerals, and spare mourners the necessity of standing exposed in weather during interment, and urns would be safe from vandalism. He joined with other proponents to form the Cremation Society of Great Britain in 1874. They founded the United Kingdom's first crematorium in working with Guarini traveling to England to assist the installation of the crematorium. They first tested it on the 17th of March in 1879 with the body of a horse. Now, after protest and an intervention by the Home Secretary, Sir Richard Cross, their plans were put on hold. Now, in 1884, the Welsh Neo-Druidic priest, William Price, was arrested and put on trial for attempting to cremate his son's body. Price successfully argued in court that while the law did not state that cremation was legal, it also did not state that it was illegal. This case set a precedent that allowed the Cremation Society to proceed. In 1885, the first official cremation in the United Kingdom took place in Working. The deceased was Jeanette Pickersgill, a well-known figure in literary and scientific circles. By the end of the year, the Cremation Society of Great Britain had overseen 2 more creations, a total of 3 out of 597,357 deaths in the UK that year. That's a lot of deaths. In 1888, 28 cremations took place at the venue. In 1891, the Woking Crematorium added a chapel, pioneering the concept of crematoriums being a venue for funerals as well as cremations. Other early crematoriums in Europe were built in 1878 in the town of Gotha in Germany and later in Heidelberg in 1891. The first modern crematorium in the U.S. was built in 1876 by Francis Urian Lemoyne. After hearing about its use in Europe, like many early proponents, he was motivated by a belief it would be beneficial for public health. Before Lemoyne's crematory closed in 1901, it had performed 42 cremations. Other countries that opened their crematoriums included Sweden, 1887 in Stockholm, Switzerland, 1889 in Zurich, and France in 1889 in Père-Lachaise. The famous French actor Jean Gabin was cremated at the crematorium of Père-Lachaise Cemetery in 1976 for an anti-cleric motivation. His ashes were scattered at sea, and he was honored by the President of the French Republic, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing. I'm sure I said that wrong. The Western spread, how it got to the Western. Some of the various Protestant churches came to accept cremation. Now, in Anglican and Nordic Protestant countries, cremation gained acceptance through it did not yet become the norm, first by the upper classes and the cultural circles, and then by the rest of the population. In 1905, in Westminster Abbey, interned ashes for the first time. By 1911, the Abbey was expressing a preference for interning ashes. The 1908 Catholic Encyclopedia was critical of the development, referring to them as sinister movements and associating them with Freemasonry. Although it said there is nothing directly opposed to any dogma of the church in the practice of cremation. In the U.S., only about one crematory per year was built in the late 19th century. As embalming became more widely accepted use, crematoriums lost their sanity. Let me repeat this. As embalming became more widely accepted and used, the crematories lost their sanitary edge. Not to be left behind, the crematories had an idea of making cremation beautiful. They started building crematories with stained glass windows and marble floors with frescoed walls. And Australia also started to establish modern cremation movements and societies. Australians had their first purpose-built modern crematorium and chapel in the West Herons Cemetery in the South Australian capital of Adelaide. Now, this was in 1901. This small building, resembling the buildings of Woking, remained largely unchanged from its 19th century style and was in full operation until the late 1950s. This is the oldest operating crematorium in Australia, and it is at Rockwood Cemetery in Sydney. It opened in 1925. In the Netherlands, the foundation of the Association for Optional Cremation. God, I'm sorry. I got to repeat that sentence. It's a lot of reading. In the Netherlands, the foundation of Association of Optional Cremation in 1874 ushered in a long debate about its merits and demerits of cremation. Laws against cremation were challenged and invalidated in 1915. This was 2 years after the construction of the first crematorium in the Netherlands. The cremation did not become legally recognized until 1955. Then we have World War II that happens. Now, I can see where cremation was used in World War II a lot because of the amount of bodies they had to do something with. Okay, and I know this is a horrible discussion. I know it is, but it's so, I think, understanding where cremation started, because I wanted to talk about the what, when, where, and how when I started my conversation on what happens to the ashes when you pass away if you're the holder of the ashes for the family, right? So let's keep going. During World War II, 1939 to 1945, Nazi Germany used specially built furnaces in at least 6 extermination camps throughout occupied Poland, including in Auschwitz, Birkenau, and Chełmno, Belzunnik, Majdanek, Salvador, and Treblinka, where the bodies of those murdered by gassing were disposed of using the incineration. The efficiency of the industrialized killing in the Operation Reinhardt during the most deadly phase of the Holocaust produced too many corpses. Therefore, the crematorium manufactured to SS specifications were put into use, and all of them to handle the disposals around the clock, day and night. The Verba-Welser report offers the following description. Now, this is disgusting and horrible, but it is a part of history that we do need to talk about because it happened. Okay, this happened. I hope there's never another leader who is able to do this type of, it was the most, it's the worst, this is the worst thing that's happened, actually. I mean, I don't know the word I want to use, but there should never be another person be allowed to have that much power that they can take out nations of people like that. At present, there are 4 crematorias in operations in Birkenau, 2 large ones 1 and 2, and 2 smaller ones, 3 and 4. Those of a type 1 and 2 consist of 3 parts: the furnace room, the large halls, and the gas chamber. A huge chimney rises from the furnace room, around which are grouped in 9 furnaces, each having 4 openings. Each opening can take 3 normal corpses at once, and after an hour and a half, the bodies are completely burned. This corresponds to the daily capacity of about 2,000 bodies. Now, crematoria 3 and 4 work on nearly the same principles, but their capacity is only half as large. Thus, total capacity of the 4 cremating and gases plants at Birkenau amounts to about 6,000 daily. 6,000 cremations daily. That is horrific. The Holocaust furnaces were supplied by a number of manufacturers, with the best known and most common being Toft and Sons, as well as Corey Company of Berlin, whose ovens were elongated to accommodate 2 bodies, slid inside from the backside, and the ashes were taken out of the front. In the modern era, in the 20th century, cremation had gained varying degrees of acceptance in most Christian denominations. William Temple, the most senior bishop in the Church of England, was cremated after his death in the office in 1944. The Roman Catholic Church accepted the practice more slowly. Now, in 1963, at the Second Vatican Council, Pope Paul VI lifted the ban on cremation, and in 1966 allowed Catholic priests to officiate at cremation ceremonies. This is done on the condition that the ashes must be buried or interned, not scattered. Many countries where burial is tradition saw cremation rise to become a significant, if not the most common way of disposing of dead bodies. Now, in the 1960s and 70s, there was an unprecedented phase of the crematorium constructions in the United Kingdom and the Netherlands. Now, starting in the 1960s, cremation has become more common than burial in several countries where the latter is traditional. This has included the United Kingdom in 1968, Czechoslovakia in 1980, and Canada in the early 2000s, the United States in 2016, and Finland in 2017. Factors cited include cheaper costs, especially a factor after the 2008 recession, growth in secular attitudes, and declining oppositions in some Christian denominations. Now, here's the modern process. The cremation occurs in a crematorium, which is located at a crematorium or crematory. In many countries, the crematorium is a venue for funerals as well as cremation. A cremator is an industrial furnace that is able to generate temperatures of 871 to 982 Celsius, which is 1600 to 1800 Fahrenheit, to ensure the disintegration of the corpse. Modern cremator fuels include oil, natural gas, propane, and the Hong Kong coal gas. Modern cremators automatically monitor their interior to tell when the cremation process is complete and have a spy hole so that an operator can see the inside. The time required for cremation varies from body to body, with the average being about 90 minutes for an adult body. The chamber where the body is placed is called a cremation chamber or retort and is lined with a heat-resistant refractory bricks. The refractory bricks are designed in several layers. Typically a layer of insulation brick, most calcium silicates in nature. Heavy-duty crematories are usually designed with 2 layers of fire bricks inside the insulation layer. The layer of fire bricks in contact with the combustion process protects the outer layer and must be replaced from time to time. The body is generally required to be inside a coffin or combustible container. This allows the body to be quickly and safely slid into the crematorium. It also reduces the health risk to the operators. The coffin and the container inserted, charged into the crematorium quickly as possible to avoid the heat loss. Some crematoriums allow relatives viewing by the charging. Oh, I don't think I'd want to watch that. This is sometimes done for religious reasons such as traditional Hindu and the Jain funerals, and is also customary in Japan. Body containers. In the United States, federal law does not dictate any container required for cremation. Certain states require Wait a minute, not now. Okay. Certain states require an opaque or non-transparent, am I plugged in? Yeah, I'm plugged in. Okay. Or non-transparent container for all cremations. This can be a simple corrugated cardboard box or a wooden casket coffin. Another option is a cardboard box that fits inside a wooden shell, which is designed to look like a traditional casket. After the funeral service, the box is removed. Go away. The box is removed. Hang on a minute. Made me lose my place. Okay. All right. From the shell before the cremation, permitting the shell to be reused. In the United Kingdom, the body is not removed from the coffin and is not placed into the container as described above. The body is cremated with the coffin, which is why British coffins that are to be used for cremation and must be combustible. The Code of Cremation Practice forbids the opening of the coffin once it has arrived to the crematorium, and the rules stipulate that it must be cremated within 72 hours of the funeral service. Therefore, the United Kingdom, the bodies are cremated in the same coffin they are placed in at the undertakers, although these regulations allow the use of approved covers during the funeral service. It is recommended that the jewelry be removed before the coffin is sealed for the reasons. When cremation is finished, the remains are passed through a magnetic field to remove any metal which would be interned elsewhere into the crematorium grounds or increasingly recycled. These ashes, okay, and here's something, let me think about this. Now, people might not realize that if they buried their loved one with jewelry and they were going to be cremated, that somebody's going to be taking that gold and recycling it, and they're going to make the money off that gold. Do not ever bury a person with any jewelry on them, period. Don't do it, okay? In Germany, hang on a minute. Now, oh boy. In the United Kingdom, the body is not removed from this coffin. It's placed into the container as described above. The body is cremated within the coffin, which is why all British coffins are to be used for cremation must be combustible. Now, we've talked about the Code of Cremation Practices forbids the opening. We talked about that. Therefore, in the United Kingdom's bodies are cremated in the same coffin that they were placed in, and it happens during the first 72 hours. The jewelry is removed, and then it's passed through a magnetic field to remove any metals, so that when it's interned elsewhere in the crematorium grounds or increasingly it's recycles. The ashes are entered into a cremulator to further grind the remains down to a finer texture before being given to the relatives or loved ones or scattered in the crematorium grounds where facilities exist. In Germany, this process mostly is similar to that in the United Kingdom. The body is cremated in the coffin, and a piece of the fire clay with a number on it is used for identifying the remains of the dead after burning. The remains are then placed in a container called the ash capsule, which generally is put into a cinerary urn. In Australia, reusable or cardboard coffins are rare, with only a few manufacturers now supplying them. For low cost, a plain particle board coffin known in the trade as a chipper or a shipper or pyro can be used. Handles, if fitted, are plastic and approved for the use of the cremator. Cremations can be a delivery only, with no preceding chapel service at the crematorium, although a church service may have been held, preceded by a service in one of the crematorium chapels. Delivery only allows crematoria to schedule cremations to make best use of the cremators, perhaps by holding the body overnight in a refrigerator, allowing a lower fee to be charged. The box containing the body is placed into the retort and incinerated at a temperature of 760 to 1150 Celsius, which is 1400 to 2100 Fahrenheit. During the cremation process, the greater portion of the body, especially the organs and other soft tissues, is vaporized and oxidized by the intense heat. Gases released or discharged through an exhaust system. Jewelry such as necklaces, wristwatch, rings, and are ordinarily removed before cremation and returned to the family. Several implanted devices are required to remove. They remove pacemakers and other medical devices that can cause large, dangerous explosions. Now, in the Netherlands, these are removed by either the undertaker or the hospital where the person died. Contrary to popular belief, the cremated remains are not ashes in the usual sense. After incineration is complete, the dry bone fragments are swept out of the retort and pulverized by a machine called a cremulator, essentially a high-capacity, high-speed pulverizer to process them into ashes or cremated remains, although pulverization may also be performed by hand. This leaves the bone into fine, sand-like texture and color, able to be scattered without need for mixing any foreign materials, though the size of the grain varies depending on the cremulator used. The mean weight of an adult is 2.4 or 5.3 pounds. That means the weight for an adult male could be 1 kg or 2.2 higher than that for an adult female. There are various types of cremulators, including rotating devices, grinders, and older models using heavy metal balls. The grinding process typically takes about 20 seconds. In most Asian countries, the bones are not pulverized unless requested beforehand. When not pulverized, the bones are collected by the family and stored as one might do with ashes. The appearance of a cremated remains after grinding is one of the reasons they are called ashes, although not technically termed, sometimes used as cremains. a cremation or cremated or remains. The Cremation Association of North America prefers that the word cremains not to be used for referring to the human cremated remains. The reason given is that cremains is thought to have less connection with the deceased, whereas a loved one is cremated remains has a more identifiable human connection. After final grinding, ashes are placed in a container, which can be anything from a simple cardboard box to a decorative urn. The default container used by most crematoria is when nothing more expensive has been selected is a hinged, snap-locking plastic box. Oh, that just seems horrible. That just seems horrible. Now, ash weight and compositions. Cremated remains are mostly dry calcium phosphates with some minor minerals such as salts of sodium, potassium, and sulfur. And most carbon are driven off its oxidized gases during the process, although about 1 to 4% of the carbon remains as carbonate. So think about this. If they're going to make a diamond out of the carbon from the remains from the crematorium, there's not much of it at all. 1 to 4% is left of the actual carbon from the body. So that's why it's hard to make those diamonds, and they don't have a lot of material to make it from. That's amazing. These are things I had no idea about. I didn't know. I never knew. The ashes remaining represents roughly 3.5% of the body's original mass, or 2.5% in children. Because the weight of dry bone fragments is so closely connected to skeletal mass, their weight varies greatly from person to person. Because many changes in the body composition, such as fat and muscle loss or gain, do not affect the weight of a cremated remains. The weight of the remains can be more closely predicted from the person's height and sex, which predicts skeletal weight, and then it can be predicted from the person's simple weight. Ashes of adults can be said to weigh from 876 to 3,784 grams, which is 1 pound 15 ounces to 8 pounds 5 ounces, with women's ashes generally weighing about 2,750 grams or 6 pound 1 ounce, and men's ashes generally weighing above 1,887 grams or 4.3 ounces. Bones are not all that remain after cremation. There may be melted metal lumps from missed jewelry, casket furniture, dental fillings, and surgical implants such as hip replacements. Breast implants do not have to be removed before cremation. Some medical devices, such as pacemakers, may be removed before cremation to avoid the risk of explosion. Large items such as titanium hip replacements, which tarnish but do not melt, or casket hinges are usually removed before the process, as they may damage the processor. If they are missed at first, they must ultimately be removed before pressing is complete, as items such as titanium joint replacements are far too durable to be ground. Implants may be returned to the family, but are more commonly sold as non-ferrous scrap metal. After the remains are processed, smaller bits of metal, such as tooth fillings and rings, commonly known as gleanings, are sieved out and may be later interned in common and consecrated ground in a remote area of the cemetery. They also may be sold as precious metal scrap. Oh God, can you imagine how many times that gold has been scraped out of these cremations and then sold and reused to make new jewelry? We could all be wearing something that could be from old gold that's been reprocessed, which that would be a sad thought. I would not like to know that if that was what I had. Now, retention of disposal of remains. This is kind of interesting. Cremated remains are returned to the next of kin in different manners according to the custom and country. In the United States, the cremated remains are also always contained in a thick, watertight polyethylene plastic bag contained within a hard snap-to-close rectangular plastic container, which is labeled with a printed label. The basic sealed plastic container bag may be contained within a further cardboard box or a velvet sack, or they may be contained within an urn the family had already purchased. An official certificate of cremation prepared under the authority of the crematorium accompanies the remains, and if required by law, the permit for disposition of human remains, which must remain within the cremated remains. Now, you cannot just illegally cremate people. These people are regulated, their records are checked, you can't just illegally cremate someone. Here's another thing that people do not realize that I'm going to talk about for just a minute. You know, we had cases that we've looked at where people thought, well, I'll just put them over here and I'll just burn them in the barbecue, whatever. Nothing at home ever gets hot enough to ever cremate a body. There's no way a person in a burn pile can get it hot enough to cremate a body. So, I mean, if there's any deranged people out there thinking that's what they're going to do, rethink it, because it's not going to happen. You will get caught because you cannot get it hot enough to cremate the body. Now, Let's go back over here. Cremated remains can be kept in the urn, stored in a special memorial building like the columbarium, or buried in the ground at many locations, or sprinkled on special fields, mountains, or in the sea. In addition, there are several services in which the cremated remains will be scattered in a variety of ways or locations. Some examples are via helium balloons, through fireworks, shot from a shotgun shell, or by boat or scattered from the airplane or drone. One service sends a lipstick-sized tube, a lipstick-sized sample of the cremated remains into low orbit Earth. Oh wow, into low Earth orbit. That's interesting. Where the remains for years, but not permanently, before re-entering the atmosphere. Some companies offer a service to turn part of the cremated remains into synthetic diamonds, which can be made into jewelry. The cremation jewelry is also known as funeral jewelry, remembrance jewelry, or memorial jewelry. A portion of the cremated remains may be retained in specialty designed lockets known as crematorium jewelry, or even blown into special glass keepsakes or glass orbs. Cremated remains may also be incorporated with urns and cement into part of an artificial wreath, or they can also be mixed into paint and made into portraits of the deceased. Some individuals use very small amounts of the remains in tattoo ink for the remembrance portraits. The cremated remains can be scattered in national parks in the United States with a special permit. They can also be scattered on private property with permission by the owner. The cremated remains may also be entombed. Most cemeteries will grant permission for burial at cremated remains in occupied cemetery plots that have already been purchased or are in use from families disposing of the cremated remains without any additional charge. Oh, that's great. So if you already have family members in their spots at the cemetery and you have other family members who wanted to be cremated, you may just bury them in the same spot that you've already purchased with your other family member. I think that's interesting. I think at that point, that might be the best way to deal with it instead of carrying grandma around on your mantle in your home, or having grandma, grandpa, and your great grandma on your mantle in your home that you have to decide what to do with. I did not know you could do that. I think it's a wonderful option. Okay, let's keep going here. Okay. Cremated remains may also be incorporated with an urn. Okay, we've already talked about that. Now they can make an artificial reef in the ocean with the cement and the ashes of a person. It's an artificial reef and it's used in the ocean. It can be used in an aquarium. It can be used anywhere that you need to create an artificial reef. I think that's interesting too. Ashes are alkaline. In some areas, such as Snowdon and Wales, environmental authorities have warned that the frequent scattering of ashes can change the nature of the soil and may affect the ecology. The final disposition depends on personal preferences of the deceased as well as their cultural and religious beliefs. Some religions will permit the cremated remains to be sprinkled or retained at home. Some religions, such as the Roman Catholics, prefer that the cremated remains in the holy prefer to either bury or entomb the remains. Hinduism obliges the closest male relative, the son or the grandson, of the deceased to immerse the cremated remains in the holy river Gange, preferably in one of the holy cities as Triveni, Sanglan, Allahabad, or Varanasi, or Haridwar. I know I'm not saying this correctly, in India. The Sikhs immerse the remains in the Satoli, usually at the, at the Karidbar Sahib. I know I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but that's because I don't know that language. Anyway, in southern India, the ashes are immersed in the river Kaveri as a Pashima Vahini and the Sugranapathina as a stretch where the river flows from the east to the west, depicting the life of a human being from sunrise to sunset. In Japan and Taiwan, the remaining bone fragments are given to the family and are used in burial rituals before the interment. Reasons. Now, here's the reasons why people do these things. Aside from religious reasons, some people find that prefer the cremation over traditional burial for the personal reasons that the thought of a long and slow decomposition process is unappealing to some. Many people find that they prefer cremation because it disposes of the body relatively quickly. Other people view cremation as a way of simplifying their funeral process. These people view a traditional ground burial as an unneeded complication of the funeral process, and thus choose cremation to make their services as simple as possible. Cremation is a more simple disposition method to plan than a burial funeral. This is because with a burial funeral, one would have to plan for more transportation services for the body, as well as embalming and other preservation methods. With a burial funeral, one will also have to purchase a casket, a headstone, a grave plot, an opening and a closing of the grave, and a mortician fee. Cremation funerals only require planning the transportation of the body to the crematorium, cremation of the body, and a cremation urn. The cost factor tends to make cremation attractive. Generally speaking, cremation is cheaper than traditional burial services, especially if direct cremation, also known as bare cremation, is chosen, in which the body is cremated as soon as legally possible without any sort of a service. For some, even cremation is still relatively expensive, especially as a lot of fuel is required to perform it. Methods to reduce the fuel consumption or fuel cost include the use of different fuels, natural gas, propane, compared to wood, or by using an incinerator or retort, or a closed cabin rather than open fire. For surviving kin, cremation is preferred because of simple portability. Survivors relocating to another city or country have the option of transporting the remains of their loved ones with the ultimate goal of being interned or scattered together. Now, during the COVID-19 pandemic, cremation was preferred for those who died from the disease to prevent spreading the virus to others upon touching the dead body. Now, let me see how much longer this is. Ooh-wee, this is a lot of reading, but we're almost done. Okay, now. Let's go back up here. Now we read during COVID. All right. Let's get on down here where we were. Now let's look at the religions. The religious views. In Christianity, countries and cultures, cremations has historically been discouraged and viewed as a desecration of God's image and as inference with the resurrection of the dead taught in Scripture. It is now acceptable into some denominations since a little interpretation of Scripture is less common in the modern reformist traditions. In Catholics, Christians prefer to bury the dead rather than to cremate the remains, and was common in Roman culture. The early church carried on Judaism's respect for the human body as being created in God's image and followed their practices of speedy interment in hopes of the future resurrection of all the dead. The Roman catacombs and medieval venetions or relics or Roman Catholic saints witnesses this preference. For them, the body was not a mere receptacle for the spirit that was the real person, but an integral part of the human person. They saw many early practices involved with disposal of dead bodies as pagan or an insult to the body. The idea that cremation might interfere with God's ability to resurrect the body was refuted by the 2nd century Octavius Amnesius Felix, in which he said every body, whether it is dried up into dust or dissolved into moisture or is compressed into ashes or is attenuated into smoke, is withdrawn from us, but it is reserved for God in the custody of the elements. Nor, as you believe, do we fear any loss from sepulture, but we adopt the ancient and better custom of burying them in the earth. A similar practice of boiling to remove the flesh from the bones was also punished with excommunication in 1300 degree of Pope Boniface VIII. And while there was a clear and prevailing preference for burial, there was no general church law forbidding cremation until 1866. In medieval Europe, cremation was practiced mainly in situations where there were multitudes of corpses simultaneously present, such as after a battle or after a pestilence or famine, or where there was an imminent fear of diseases spreading from the corpses, since individual burials without digging graves would take too long and body decomposition would begin before all the corpses could be interred. Beginning in the Middle Ages, and moreover so in the 18th century, and later, non-Christian rationalists and classicists began to advocate for cremation again as a statement denying the resurrection and or the afterlife. Although pro-cremation movement often took care to address these concerns, sentiment within the Catholic Church against cremation became the hardened in the rejection of Christian beliefs and the resurrection to the Holy See forbade the Catholics to practice the cremations in 1886. Now, the 1917 Code Canon Law incorporated this ban. In 1963, recognizing that the general cremation was being sought for practical purposes and not as a denial of the bodily resurrection, the choice of cremation was permitted in some circumstances. The current 1983 Code of Canon Law states, the Church earnestly recommends the pious custom of Christian burial to be retained, but it does not entirely forbid cremation, except if this is chosen for reasons which is contrary to the Christian teaching. There are no universal rules governing Catholic funeral rites in connection with cremation, but Episcopal conferences have laid down rules for various countries. Of these, perhaps the most elaborate of those established was the necessary confirmation of the Holy See by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops and published in the Appendix II of the United States edition of the Order of Christian Funerals. Although the Holy See has in some cases authorized bishops to grant permission for funeral rites to be carried out in the presence of cremated remains, it is preferred that the rites be carried out in the presence of a still intact body. Practices perceived as showing insufficient respect for the ashes of the dead, such as turning them into jewelry or scattering them, are forbidden for Catholics, but burial on land or sea or enclosing in a niche or columbarium is now considered acceptable. The Anglicans and the Lutherans. In 1917, Volume 6 of the American Lutheran Survey stated, the Lutheran clergy as a rule refuse, and that the Episcopal pastors often take a stand against. Indeed, in 1870s, the Anglican Bishop of London stated that practices of cremation would undermine the faith of mankind and the doctrine of the resurrection of the body and hastens rejections of a scriptural worldview and so bring out the most disastrous social revolutions. The Lutheran pastor George Henry Gerbig stated. Third, as to cremation, this is not a biblical or Christian mode of disposing of the dead. The Old and the New Testament agree and take for granted that as the body was taken originally from the earth, so it returned to the earth again. Burial is a natural and Christian mode. There are beautiful symbolisms in it. The whole terminology and eschatology presupposes it. Cremation is purely heathenish. It was then the main practice among pagan Greeks and Romans. The majority of the Hindus thus dispose of their dead. This is dishonoring to the body, intended as a temple of the Holy Ghost and to bear the image of God. It is an insidious denial of the doctrine of the resurrection. Some Protestant churches welcomed the use of cremation at a much earlier date than the Catholic Church. Pro-cremation sentiment was not unanimous among Protestants, as some have retained a little interpretation of the Scripture. The first crematoria in the Protestant countries were built in the 1870s and in 1908. The dean in the chapter of Westminster Abbey, one of the most famous Anglican churches, required the remains to be cremated for burial in the abbey's residence. Today, scattering or strewing is an acceptable practice in some Protestant denominations, and some churches have their own garden of remembrance, or the grounds which remains can be scattered. Some denominations, like Lutheran churches in Scandinavia, favor the urns being buried in the family graves. A family grave can thus contain urns and many generations, and also the urns of spouses and loved ones. Then there's the Methodism. In 1898, the Methodist tract titled Immortality and Resurrection noted that the burial is a result of a belief in the resurrection of the body, while cremation anticipates an annihilation. The Methodist Review noted in 1874 that 3 thoughts alone would lead us to suppose that the early Christians would have special care of their dead, namely the essential Jewish origin of the church, the mode of burial of their founder, and the doctrine of the resurrection of the body, so powerfully urged the apostles and so mighty of its influence on the primitive Christians. For these considerations, the Roman customs of cremation would be most repulsive to the Christian mind. Since at least 1992, the United Methodist Church does not have a specific official statement or either endorses or condemns cremation, leaving the choice to individuals and families. Resources within the official ritual refer to the possible use of an urn and the interment of the ashes. Eastern Orthodox and other oppositions. Some branches of Christianity entirely oppose cremation, including the non-mainstream Protestant groups of the Orthodox churches. The Eastern Orthodox and Oriental Orthodox churches forbid cremation. Exceptions are made for circumstances where it cannot be avoided, when civil authority demands it, or in the aftermath of a war during epidemics, or if they may be sought for a good cause, such as discovery of a body already in a state of decomposition. But when cremation is specifically and willfully chosen for no good cause by the one who is deceased, he or she is not permitted a funeral in the church and may also be permanently excluded from the burial in a Christian cemetery and the prayers for the departed. In Orthodoxy, cremation is perceived as a rejection of the temple of God, of the dogma of the general resurrection. Most independent Bible churches, free churches, holiness churches, and those of Anabaptist faith will not practice cremation. As for one example, the Church of God, the Restoration, forbids the practice of cremation, believing as the early church did, that it continues to be a pagan practice. Churches of the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or LDS. The Church of the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS churches, has in the past decades discouraged cremation without expressly forbidding it. In the 1950s, for example, Apostle Bruce R. McConkie wrote that only under the most extraordinary and unusual circumstances would cremation be consistent with LDS teachings. More recent LDS publications have provided instructions for how to dress the deceased when they have received their temple endowments and thus wear temple garments prior to the cremation for those wishing to do so. Or in the countries where the law requires cremation, except or when required by law, the family of the deceased may decide whether the body should be cremated, though the church does not normally encourage this. Hinduism. Let's see. Hinduism, religions such as Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Jainism, they practice cremation. The founder of the Buddhism, the Buddha, was cremated. A dead adult Hindu is mourned with a cremation, while the dead child is typically buried. The rite of passage is performed in harmony with the Hindu religions, and the views of the microism of all living beings is a reflection of the macroisms of the universe. The soul, the Atman or the Brahman, is the essence of an immortal that is released at the Atestia ritual, but both the body and the universe are vehicles and transitory in various schools in Hinduism. They consist of 5 elements: air, water, fire, earth, and space. The last rite of passage returns the body to the 5 elements and origins. The roots of this beliefs are found in the Vedas. For example, in the hymns of the Rigveda in section 10.16 as follows: Burn him not, nor quite consume him. Agony, let not his body or his skin be scattered. O all-possessing fire, when thou hast matured him, then send him on his way unto the fathers. When thou hast made him ready, all-possessing fire, then do thou give him over the fathers. When he attains unto the life that awaits him, he shall become subject to the will of gods. The sun receives thine eye, the wind thy prana. Go, as the merit is, to the earth or the heaven. Go, if thy lot, unto the waters. Go, make thine home in plants and all thy members. The final rite in this case of ultimately death of a child is usually not cremation but a burial. This is rooted in Rigveda section 10.18, where the hymns mourn the death of a child, praying to the deity Maritya to neither harm our girls nor boys, and please the earth to cover protect the deceased child as soft wool. Ashes of cremated bodies are usually spread in rivers, which are considered holy in the Hindu practice. The Ganges is considered to be the holiest river, and the Varanasi, which is situated on the banks of the river, is regarded as the most sacred site for cremation. The Balinese people. In Balinese Hinduism, the deceased are typically buried temporarily in a grave or container for a period that may exceed 1 month, allowing the cremation ceremony of the Nagaban to be conducted on an auspicious date according to the Balinese Havanese calendar, or the Saka. If the deceased was a court servant, member of the courts, or minor noble, cremation can be postponed up to several years to coincide with the cremation of their prince. The Balinese funerals can be costly, and the body may remain interned until the family is able to afford the ceremony or until there is a group funeral planned by the village or the family, thereby reducing the expenses. Temporary burial also serves as a practical purpose. The natural decomposition process reduces bodily fluids, facilitating an easier, more rapid, and more complete cremation. Islam. Most Muslims believe Islam strictly forbids cremation. Its teaching is that cremation is not in line with the respect or the dignity due to the deceased. They believe Islam has specific rights for the treatment of the body after death. And this is Judaism. The first reference to cremation in the Hebrew Bible is found in 1 Samuel 31. In this passage, the dead bodies of Saul and his sons are burned and their bones are buried. And Judaism has traditionally disapproved of cremation in the past as a rejection of the respect due to humans who are created in the image of God. Judaism has also disapproved of the preservation of the dead by means of embalming and mummifying, as it involves mutilation of the corpse. Mummification was a practice of the ancient Egyptians, among whom the Israelites are said in the Torah to have lived as slaves. Through history and up until the philosophical movements of the current era of modern Orthodox, Haredi, or Hasidic movements in Judaism have maintained the historical practice of strict biblical line against cremation and disapprove of it as Jewish law forbids. The halakha concern is grounded in the literal interpretation of Scripture, viewing the body as created in the image of God and upholding a bodily resurrection as a core belief of traditional Judaism. The interpretation was occasionally opposed by some Jewish groups as the Sadducees, who denied resurrection. The Tanka emphasizes burial as the normal practice. For instance, Darbium, or Deuteronomy 21.23, specifically commanding the burial of executed criminals, with both a positive command derived from the verse to command one to bury a dead body, a negative command forbidding neglecting to bury a dead body. Wow. Some from the generally liberal conservative Jewish also oppose cremation. Some very strongly see it as a rejection of God's design. During the 19th and the 20th centuries, as the Jewish cemeteries in many European towns had become crowded and were running out of space, in a few cases, cremation for the first time became an approved means of corpse disposal among emerging liberal and reformed Jewish. In line with their general rejection of literal scripture interpretation and traditional Torah rituals. The current liberal movement, like Reformed Judaism, still permit cremation, although burial remains are the preferred options. The Central Conference of American Rabbis has issued a response stating that families are permitted to choose cremation, but Reform rabbis are allowed to discourage the practice. However, Reform rabbis are instructed not to refuse to officiate at a cremation. In Israel, the religious ritual event including a free burial and funeral service for all who die in Israel and all citizens, including the majority of the Jewish population, including the secular or non-observants, are almost universally facilitated through the Rabbinate of Israel. This is an Orthodox organization following historical and traditional Jewish law. In Israel, there were no formal crematoriums until 2004, when B&L Cremation Systems, Inc. became the first crematorium manufacturer to sell a retort to Israel. In August of 2007, an Orthodox youth group in Israel was accused of burning down the country's sole crematorium, which they see an affront to God. The crematorium was rebuilt by its owners and a retort was replaced. Now, let's see. The next faith that we're going to talk about is the Baha'i. I know I'm saying this wrong, but it's the Baha'i faith. Forbids cremation. A letter written on behalf of Shogai Ifande to the National Spiritual Assembly states, he feels that in view of what Abdul Baha says against cremation, the believer should be strongly urged as an act of faith to make provisions against their remains being cremated. Baha'u'llah has laid down as law that the aqueduct and the manner of Baha'i or burial is so beautiful, befitting, and dignified that no believer should deprive himself. Then there's the Wicca. Both burial and cremation are practiced by Wiccans, and there is no set directive on how the body should be disposed of after death. Wiccans believe that the body is merely a shell for the spirit, so cremation is not viewed as irreverent or disrespectful. One tradition practiced by Wiccans is to mix the ashes from the cremation with the soil, which is then used to plant a tree. There's something called Zoroastrianism. Traditional Zoroastrianism, saying this wrong probably. Traditionally, Zoroastrianism disavows cremation or burial to preclude pollution or fire of earth. Traditional method of corpse disposal is through the ritual exposure of Tower of Silence. Both burial and cremation are increasingly popular alternatives. Some contemporary adherents of the faith have opted for cremation. Pastori, the singer Freddie Mercury of the group Queen, was cremated after his death. The Chinese. Neo-Confucianism under Zhi Zai strongly discourages cremation of one's parents and corpses as unfilial. Han Chinese traditionally practiced burial and viewed cremation as a taboo, as a barbarian practice. Traditionally, only Buddhist monks in China practiced cremation, but now that the Atheist Communist Party enforces a strict cremation policy, exceptions are made for Huai, who do not cremate their dead due to the Islamic beliefs. The minority Jurchen and the Manchu descendants originally practiced cremation as part of their culture. They adopted practice of burial from the Han, but many Manchus continued to cremate their dead. Pets. In Japan, more than 465 companion animal temples are in operation. These venues hold funerals and rituals for dead pets. In Australia, pet owners can purchase services to have their companion animal cremated and placed in a pet cemetery or taken home. Though pets cremation has accelerated in recent years, Americans are still burying their pets in a 2-to-1 ratio. The emissions from pet crematoriums have been a source of controversy in many of the United States, many of the little cities in the United States. Now here's the rates for it. Now this is something I wanted to know, and this will be the last that we're going to talk about. This is the rates. The cremation rate varies considerably across countries, with Japan reporting a 99.97% cremation rate, while Romania reported a rate of 0.5% in 2018. The cremation rate in the United Kingdom has been increasingly steady, with the national average rising to 34.70% in 1960 to 78.10% in 2019. According to the National Funeral Directors Association, the cremation rate in the United States in 2016 was 50.2%. And this was in 2017 expected to increase to 63.8%. By 2025, 78.8%, and they expect 78.8% by 2035. The Nordic countries have some of the highest cremation rates in the world, as the city in Denmark and Finland have made the excess heat from the cremations to heat the nearby homes. What? Oh my God. Let me repeat this. Nordic countries have some of the highest cremation rates in the world, and cities in Denmark and Finland have made use of excess heat from cremations to heat their nearby homes. That's horrible. Okay, so that is all about cremation and ashes and all that. But here's the thing. I know this has been a long 2 hours, but here's the thing about it. There are rules about who controls ashes. Now, in the United States, ashes are not property. You don't own them. The law gives control, not ownership, to the person highest on the legal priority list. Now, here's the list, and this is how it goes. Generally, the U.S. priority order: person named in the written directive, a surviving spouse, an adult child, parents, adult siblings, and next of kin. And the family cannot agree, a probate judge will decide who gets the ashes. In Texas, there are specific rules about ashes. The Texas Health and Safety Code 711.002. Agents designated in written directives, surviving spouses, adult children, parents, adult siblings, and next of kin order of inheritance. Texas also allows a disposition authorization affidavit, which lets someone choose who controls their remains, even if it's not family. So this is how it goes with the ashes and who is responsible. It's like your heir. If you are the heir that is given the ashes, then your heir takes the ashes. But I'm going to tell you, based on everything I've read today and everything I've seen today, at this point, I would think that if you just choose to cremate, if your family chooses to cremate, the best alternative is the columbarium. That way you don't have 5 or 6 urns of ashes sitting around your home from your different family members that have passed away. That is my suggestion. Now, I know that this has been a weird conversation and it's a lot to take in. It's something people don't think about. But here's the thing. You don't just finish grief. You continue living with remains, and sometimes what remains is silence and a box of ashes. Okay? We don't tell people how to grieve. We don't tell people how long to grieve. We show you what happens after the decision is already made. So you can take from this whatever you want. And this was basic. I should have done this as a podcast actually, because this is what this is. It's a discussion on remains, who's responsible for them, what you can do with them, what's legal, what's not legal, what beautiful things you can make them that are legal. So with that, I'm gonna let you think about that in your family. If you are the one who is left with remains, you may make choices to put them in a columbarium or to put them in plots that are already owned or that like other family members are in. It's perfectly legal. You are allowed to do that. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye, good night. I hope you've enjoyed a little bit of today's discussion. It's not for everyone. I know it's not for everyone, but it is something we need to think about, because in the end, somebody's always responsible for what's left of us. We don't just disappear. Okay? So I'm going to say, go hug your babies. Life is short and our time with them is even shorter. You all have a good night. I'll see you somewhere along the way in somebody's chat, I'm sure. A lot of our friends will be coming on tonight with their shows, and we'll just meet up there. Bye guys, see you tomorrow. Bye bye. Oh, wait a minute. What am I showing tomorrow? Let me tell you what we're going to look at tomorrow. I forgot I need to look at this. Okay, so tomorrow our show is going to come on at let's see, at 5 o'clock p.m. We are going to be. Let's see, it's tomorrow. Let me see what is today. The 23rd. No, our next show is on the 25th at 5 p.m. We're going to be on death watch for Dusty Spencer to see if he's actually going to be the oldest man to be executed in the United States. He is, but he has exhausted every appeal. There's nothing more he can do. So we'll be on a death watch, and just be looking in for that. So we'll see you later. And good night, good night, good night.